Have you ever seen someone play an invalid word?
I mean, it's not a word.
What about someone failing to challenge an invalid word?
That should be a word.
Have you seen a play span across two triple word squares?
Triple.
Okay, now imagine all three of those things at the same time. This gigantic blunder would already make it to the top of Scrabble blooper reels everywhere. What blooper reels? I can think of at least one. Hi, Mac. Anyways, what if I told you that what I'm about to show in this video is way worse than what I just described? In fact, this play is so awful, it could get Tournament Scrabble canceled. Let me explain. The blank tile is the best tile in the game. It dwarfs the value of all the other tiles. It's so powerful that you need a 5-tile combination to match its strength. Not only that, but if you combine the values of all of the good tiles, as in the tiles that are worth more than 0, you're barely breaking even with the blank. Sorry about that drawing. People keep telling me I draw well, but I think they mean something different. At this point, you might have noticed something. The blank tile is totally blank. It might seem completely obvious, but this thing needs to represent a letter of the alphabet. Once designated as a letter, the blank stays that way the entire game. So how does that identity not get lost or misconstrued throughout the game? What if there's a dispute? What happens then? This is actually a pretty tough thing to get right on a competitive level. We can't have it be my word against my opponent's word if there's a dispute, though I guess that is the name of the game. But how does this mechanic get resolved? This is the blank slip, and this is how we keep track of what the blank tile represents. Here's a rough demonstration of what designating the blank looks like. You place down the blank and you circle what letter it's supposed to be. The introduction of this brand new technology, the institution of blank designation, has prevented inconceivable amounts of disputes from occurring over the board. I remember a classic example of when the previous rule was being used, where you were supposed to write down what the blank represented on a piece of paper, similar to the current blank slip, where it was ruled that what was meant to be an N was actually a Z, or Z for the rest of you, because the letter was written sideways in an act of complete and utter panic when a player's time was running out. And even before writing it down on a piece of paper, people were relying on simple word of mouth. And it must not have been very pretty when players had a dispute. I heard him say C. No, he said D. No, he said E. Ridiculous. Boy, am I glad that we're no longer in the dark ages of blank designation disputes in the Scrabble community. We have come a long way. And although blank slips resolve disputes when it comes to what a blank is supposed to represent, the system still isn't without flaws. But let's move on to the next piece of the puzzle. If you've made it this far into the video, you probably know what a challenge is in the context of Scrabble. But you may not have known that there are two distinct challenge rules that govern the majority of competitive Scrabble play. The first rule, used almost exclusively in North American play, is the double challenge rule. This is the stricter of the two challenge rules. And to put it concisely, double challenge means if you lose a challenge, you lose a turn. So if I challenge a word unsuccessfully, there goes my next turn. But if I challenge successfully, my opponent then loses their turn after taking their play off the board. So no matter what happens during the challenge, somebody is about to lose their turn. And that's pretty significant because at the higher levels, a turn is worth between 30 and 40 points most of the time. So losing a challenge incurs a very steep consequence in double challenge. The other challenge rule that's used across the Scrabble world is 5-point challenge. In 5-point challenge, the consequence for losing a challenge depends on who loses it. If I play an invalid word and it gets challenged off, I will still lose my turn. However, if I play a valid word and my opponent challenges, the consequence is far less severe. 5 points are then added to my total score. So I get my play, but I also get a nice little bonus. And that's per word. So if a play contains more than one word and all of the words are challenged unsuccessfully, an opponent can collect multiple 5-point bonuses. So technically, you could get 40 points in a situation where all of your plays are challenged in 5-point challenge. I don't think that will ever happen. Maybe it will. But under normal circumstances, 5-point challenge is much more lax than double challenge. There is one more exception. At the end of the game, if I challenge the final play of a game in double challenge, I have nothing to lose, because by letting the play go, I'm not getting another turn. This is what we call a free challenge. However, in 5-point challenge, this is not the case. If the final play of the game is challenged, the 5-point penalties are still a thing. So this is really the only time where a double challenge can be seen as less severe than 5-point challenge.
Son, that's not a word.
And that brings us to the final topic of today's video, the words. At its core, Scrabble has all of the appearances of a word game. How else would you describe having a rack of tiles, searching for what words to play on a 15 by 15 grid, and racking up points? But wait, points have nothing to do with words. Sure, the words translate into points, but each letter, not just a letter, it has a point value as well. So there's got to be some math involved in Scrabble. Well, the more you learn about the game, the more you realize that Scrabble is really not a word game. The words are just a somewhat arbitrary list of possible moves to play. There's no world in which everyone agrees what should and shouldn't be a word. There are tons of people that spend their lives deciding what should constitute a word, but they often disagree with one another, and what is and isn't considered a word can often be far from a unanimous thing. Playing Scrabble competitively and seriously means you have to have some level of tolerance for strings of letters that you deem completely ridiculous. Now, words do have meanings, but unless knowing the meaning of the word is the only way you can remember it being a word, definitions are a completely unnecessary part of the game of Scrabble. This is in stark contrast with crossword puzzles, which is what inspired the game of Scrabble to begin with, where the only way to solve a crossword is to understand the association of the given definition. In a game of Scrabble, words are completely devoid of their definitions. For the definitions to matter, you have to remove yourself from the equation of the game. This is pretty bizarre, and I think it's part of the reason why Scrabble hasn't seen the same level of success as other games. As a child, we're taught that Scrabble is a word game, and it helps improve your vocabulary. Going from that to an extremely intricate math game that uses a combination of strategy, tactics, geometry, probability, psychology, and rote memorization. The best word I can find for that, and yes, of course I used a thesaurus, is subversion. This is not your grandma's or your 7-year-old's Scrabble. It's more than just a fun board game to play on game night. And although the general public is a huge fan of watching people excel at things, they're still part of the equation of Scrabble's success. The number one reaction to watching competitive Scrabble is, what the hell is that? People will look at the words and they will judge them. At times, those associations can be comical. Other times, those associations are anything but. Now, there are many examples of this. However, with the addition of a perfect storm of unfortunate variables, what should have just been a monumental comedy of errors could very well have been the play that canceled Scrabble. Now let's get into this story. Who are the culprits? On one side, we have Jesse Day. Jesse went from being one of the best players in North America to a force to be reckoned with on the international level. And there was a time where many would consider him to have been the second best player in the world, of course behind the undisputed Nigel Richards. Before achieving his peak on the world stage, Jesse was a very humble 3-time winner of the Crescent City Cup, one of the largest, most prestigious tournaments on the North American circuit. And it's within that tournament, the Crescent City Cup, that the game I will be showing took place in 2014. Facing Jesse was another major force in the North American Scrabble world, none other than Joey Malik, who spent most of his time on the Scrabble circuit being within the top 20 or top 10 players in North America. At this point in 2014, Joey had been dominating the circuit for well over 15 years, and had even been the top-rated player in North America in September of 2007. You might know of Joey Malik as my opponent in the 2023 North American Scrabble Players Championship, but he's been up there for over 20 years. So here's the story of this game. Joey starts off strong with the bingo. Jesse has to exchange, but somehow claws his way back into it and ties the game up with Jive. But Joey finds Burka for almost 50 points, and then Sextain for 100, increasing his lead up to 128 points over Jesse. But Jesse keeps fighting and draws the final blank, scoring really well with Mad and creating a huge threat with Op on the bottom row. Jesse's only down 60 points now, and if he manages to bingo next turn or the turn after, it's going to be a very close game. But Joey says no, 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 and plays redialing as a 9-letter word through the A and the L already on the board. But it's still not over, despite Joey being ahead 135. Why? Because Jesse notices something key in this position. Joey has no vowels. There's one letter left in the bag, and it is definitely a consonant. So Jesse has a hefty task in front of him. He doesn't have a triple-triple now, and he needs to only play one tile to draw a triple-triple next turn. Not only that, he also wants to prevent Joey from blocking the triple-triple. What's crazy is that there's no way for Joey to access any of the squares that block this triple-triple except for the bottom one, due to Joey having all consonants. There are 2 plays he can make from the E in Sextain that will reach the triple and block the triple-triple threat. Those 2 plays are Eld and End. Unfortunately for Jesse, there's no way for him to actually block a play from the E and simultaneously draw into a triple-triple. But he tries anyway and plays XI for 9 points. Jesse knew that he couldn't really win this game unless Joey made a mistake, so he gave Joey every opportunity to do so. So you might be looking at Joey's rack and seeing that he can still play Eld from the E and win for sure. But amazingly, there are 2 reasons, and not the reasons you might think, that Joey elected not to block the 2 triples. The first reason is because he had the wrong score. Joey had misadded the cumulative score after the play of Fuse and thought that Jesse had 10 fewer points than what he actually had. The second reason is that Joey had tied a game earlier in the tournament. Now, why is this important? Well, in Scrabble tournaments, it's not just the amount of wins and losses that you have that dictates your standing. Because of the high likelihood that many people have the same amount of wins and losses in a tournament, the tiebreaker that is used to determine who has the higher standing is called point spread. And point spread is just the overall sum of the differential between the scores of all of your games. So if I've played 3 games, I lost the first one by 50, won the next one by 60, and won the one after that by 70, my total record is 2-1 plus 80 points. But if you get a tie, you probably don't have to worry at all about your point spread, because the likelihood that somebody else in the same event will have the same record as you becomes very, very low. Ties are extremely rare in Scrabble, happening 1 in many hundred games. And so most of the time, if there's a tie in a tournament, that's the only tie. So the only person Joey had to worry about having the same record as him is the opponent that he tied, which means instead of 50, 60, 100 players potentially having the same record as you, there's only one. So it's common that when you have a tie in a tournament, you stop caring whatsoever about how much you lose or win a game by, and really just try to win. And winning a game by playing a 14-point move and doing all of the calculations and observations required to make the optimal play, well, that's just no fun. Oftentimes, when you don't care about how much you're winning by, you're very happy to just let your opponent play whatever they'll play, as long as you're winning the game. So in this situation, what Joey did is he calculated how much a possible triple-triple would score. And he recognized that with the scores that he had, there was no way for Jesse to win the game. And very quickly played the word blue for 39 points. There's a pun in there somewhere. I think you all can find it. Because now the play of raggings for 149 points is not going to lose the game by 8 for Jesse. It's going to win the game by 2 after recuperating the 18 points that he gets from Joey's remaining tiles. For those unfamiliar, the rule in North America is that once you use all of your tiles, you get the value of your opponent's remaining tiles times 2. And the CDPT, being worth 9 points, will double to 18, giving Jesse a final score of 532 to 530. Now hold on. Raggings is not the play that Jesse made in this position. If this had been the play that Jesse made in this position, this would still have been the swindle of the century and a complete comedy of errors on Joey's part to have lost this game that he should have won 100 times out of 100. But something else happened in this position which turns this epic comedy into a potential tragedy. There's another triple available here, a word that Scrabble players would pretty much all be way more sure of than raggings. To be honest with you guys, before I even put this video together, I had no clue that this was a valid word. I did, however, know this word. And this is indeed the word that both Jesse and Joey recognized was being played in this position. This is not an inherently offensive word. It's simply a word that used to be used, that's really out of style, and that these days nobody wants to use because of its resemblance to another word. Now, I would like to mention this word has a totally different etymology to that other word and was in use far before the other one had ever even been uttered. The definition of this word isn't pretty, it means to be stingy. Now let's go back to what I just said a few seconds ago. So no, the story does not end here, because when designating his blank on the blank slip, Jesse performed a slip of his own and circled an S instead of a D, enacting what should be known as probably the worst slip-up in Scrabble history. Now I'm having to blur this word, but you can use your imagination because this actually happened. And the worst part is that neither player noticed until it was too late. How can that be, might you ask? Well, there's one final piece to this insane puzzle. The simple act of showing my opponent my tiles by flipping the rack or by otherwise placing the tiles face up on the table or the board ends the game. There can be no challenge once that action is taken. So the play stood. Jesse won the game 532 to 530, and at some point Jesse realized what had occurred. All Joey had to do was take a look at the blank slip and challenge the final play, and he would have won the game. I think I'm taking a big risk here by even posting this video due to its contents. It's possible that something like this will never happen in a live Scrabble broadcast. We could also use delay in our live broadcasts so that if something like this happens, it can be hidden from the public eye. But it's really unfortunate that something like this is always possible. The fact that Scrabble is perceived as a word game and does contain language will always be both a huge asset to the interest that people have for the game, but also a potential death sentence in a climate where words could be far more powerful than they need to be. Thanks for watching.